Hi, my name is Emily Taylor, principal of teenyBIG. What you're about to watch is an interview with one of my clients, Lena Andrews. Lena and her executive director, Larry, from Action Housing, reached out to me in 2022 after years of tremendous growth as they provided affordable housing to people in Pittsburgh during the pandemic. The organization was really trying to plan for some big changes ahead, mainly Larry leaving the organization, retiring after 40 years, but also the tremendous staff growth increase and cost increase that they had been seeing over the last couple of years due to their growth and inflation. In this conversation, we'll discuss what the organization wanted to accomplish when they reached out to me and how my work really helped them focus, collaborate, and be more prepared for the big decisions they had ahead. Hi, my name is Emily Taylor. I am the principal of teenyBIG, and if you don't already know me, I focus on strategic listening for nonprofits and really helping them listen to their communities. So I'm here with Lena Andrews. She has done some amazing work in her career, being the senior planner at the City of Pittsburgh, senior planning specialist at the Urban Redevelopment Authority of Pittsburgh, and she's been vice president of real estate and development at Action Housing for the last 11 years. Really making the magic happen between funding, construction, and the people at Action. So Lena, I want to thank you for joining us. How are things going?
Sure. Thanks, Emily. Thanks for having me. Things are good. Things are good.
Any big highlights of things happening at Action Housing?
Yeah, I mean, there's always a lot of exciting things happening at Action Housing. We just had a ribbon cutting for a new mixed-use building with 43 affordable apartments in a really desirable neighborhood of Pittsburgh. The project's called Flats on Forward, and it's fully occupied. And I spent yesterday with some of our new residents, and it was really inspiring for me to hear their stories about how much their lives have changed just in the month or two since they moved to the building. They can like catch the bus wherever they want. They're going to local restaurants, and the library's right up the street, and there's a park. And our goal is sort of changing lives through housing. So it felt really good to meet some people who are actually impacted by our work. And I don't get to do that very much. So
Yeah, oh, that's wonderful. And I love that you're able to get it in such a functional area to really help support their lives in many ways.
yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, and we're in our other program areas, we're just, raising a lot of money, doing funding applications. We have a new program called Whole Home Repair that helps make repairs to homes owned by low-income people. It's a new Pennsylvania state funding source where we can have up to $50,000 basically in grant funds to make repairs for low-income homeowners in the Pittsburgh market. So that project, that program is getting underway, and yeah, we have a lot going on.
Always, always.
Yeah.
Um, well, I wanted to start just by kind of pulling, turning back time a little bit to when you and I first started talking. I know you, as well as Larry, Action Housing's executive director, were thinking about really needing to plan your future coming out of the pandemic. So I just wanted to take me back to that time, like what was happening at Action Housing, as Pittsburgh went through the pandemic.
Yeah, so the pandemic was a really crazy time for everyone, and it was an incredibly crazy time for us as a housing provider that houses vulnerable people. And we own 2,000 units of housing in the Pittsburgh market. We manage 1,200 of those. And a lot of the people whom we house and who we serve through our service programs were going through a really challenging time due to the pandemic. And our main focus was making sure that we were able to keep our real estate going, provide the services that people needed, help people meet their basic needs. So raising additional funds to support people and help them sort of stay housed during this really dangerous time. And at the same time, we were handling a lot of stress among our staff. Like a lot of our staff were also facing a lot of difficulty and couldn't just stay in their houses. We have maintenance people, we have property managers, we have a lot of frontline jobs that have to go out and work in our buildings at this time where there's this scary virus circulating. So it was really stressful. We also grew a lot during the pandemic because we were the agency that was selected to operate rental assistance for the county. There was a lot of federal funding that was made available during COVID to help pay rent for people who lost income due to the pandemic. So that's an amazing program, and it helps prevent eviction and helps sort of pay the operating costs of buildings for landlords. You know, if tenants aren't able to pay their rent, then you can't, as a landlord, pay insurance and maintenance and utilities and like all the stuff you have to pay to keep buildings going. So we were selected to operate that program, but that involved hiring a lot of people really fast, putting new systems in place. A lot of them were working from home. We didn't even, when the pandemic hit, we didn't really own many laptops. Some of our staff didn't have internet access. Like
Oh,
we
wow.
really,
Yeah.
yeah, we had a lot to figure out, and it was very, very sort of reactive and in an emergency situation. But it was also rewarding that we were able to keep so many people housed during such a stressful and dangerous time. So I think it felt good, but everyone came out of it very like harried and tired and stressed out. and
Yeah.
sort of wondering what was next. And at the same time, I think because Action has grown organically and we have a lot of staff that have been there for a long time, we don't really engage in a lot of strategic planning. And the last strategic plan that we did was in 1997. And I reached out to you and you talked with Larry and I, and we embarked on a journey to sort of just understand who are we now after this like very tumultuous time, and what are our goals for the next few years, understanding that we really need to do a strategic plan, but maybe it's too much to jump into that directly from no planning for so long.
Yeah. I remember when you told me that the last time you did strategic planning was in the 90s. It was a surprise, but it also you really talk through why it made sense. You just have a very kind of you know unpredictable environment that you work in, and I think COVID was a really great example of how you guys pivoted and were able to provide great services for so many people. But it makes sense after all those changes and pivots to kind of feel a little in turmoil. So I remember from our conversation really bringing up the word intentional and wanting to be more intentional about Action Housing's future. Um, what were some of the reasons you felt like you needed to be more intentional?
Because we have grown organically and we have sort of a culture of saying yes to many requests and then doing a pretty good job. More and more requests are coming our way, and there just aren't that many organizations like us in the space in which we operate. So we're filling a lot of needs in the housing space in Pittsburgh, and that's great. but we've grown to be so big that we need to have the right supporting structure in place to be able to do that. And when I say that, I mean things like accounting and human resources and communications and technology and kind of these like back of house functions that, in my opinion, are not large enough to support like the agency that has grown. We just don't have the organizational structure in place to support what we are now. And that's okay. I think we can take a step back and create that. But if we continue to grow in the way that we are, it's just gonna create too much stress for people. So in order to like ensure having a healthy future, I think we really need to start being more intentional in your word.
Yeah. So, what did you hope as we were talking about this work, I think we used the term strategic framework. What did you hope it would improve?
One thing I wanted out of it was sort of to get agreement on some priorities among our board and our senior staff. And before we did this work, One major upside of it was increasing and improving communication between the board and the senior staff prior to doing the strategic framework. We have senior staff and board at board meetings, and that's pretty much it. But this gave us like a few sessions with board members to talk through who we were, what our priorities are, what we're working on. I think a lot of our board was sort of disconnected from what we had become. And then also some of our senior staff didn't have relationships with the board. So it helped them to get to know our leadership and help us all get on the same page together. So that was one thing that I think was really productive and necessary in moving into this upcoming leadership transition, because the major sort of connection between the board and the senior staff for so many years has been Larry, and he's been at Action. I was born in 1978 and he started in 1979. So he's essentially been there my entire life. And that's wonderful. And he's created an amazing organization. But when he steps away, like it's important that there be a connection between the entity that's charged with, oversight of us and then the senior staff that's leading the organization. And that we're engaged around the same priorities.
Yeah, so I do remember when we were initially talking that Larry had been talking about retiring for many years, and hadn't. So that was one of the tensions that we were discussing as part of like, okay, how does everybody move forward together with envisioning a future that would not include him, or in a different scope. So I did I helped you listen to your community. I know I reached out to, we did a staff survey. I reached out to funders, partners, even clients, board, and really helped reflect back how people were viewing the work that Action did, especially over all these different tumultuous times of the pandemic. So when we think about what came out of that work, what most surprised you?
I mean, I guess sort of that some of the outside stakeholder, I never know like how much of our internal dynamic the outside world is aware of, and that they shared a lot of the same hopes and concerns that we had internally. Like I felt, and I think we all feel like Action has taken on this sort of outsized role in the housing space, but I think a lot of the interviews confirmed that and emphasized the incredible importance of this organization thriving beyond Larry because of the role that it's playing in Pittsburgh and in serving so many of our most vulnerable residents. So I guess, I don't know if that was surprising, but it was reinforcing. And it felt sort of like a lot of these stakeholders are our allies in this, and they're going to be with us as we transition to whatever's next for us.
Yeah, I remember one of the questions that your team wanted to answer was, what was Action Housing's magic? Because people sort of referred to, your team as being able to create magic in the Pittsburgh space. And I thought that was really fascinating to hear people articulate, stories and words around that rather than it just being magic, like just helping define what it really was.
Yeah, I think it's that we actually do things. Like we're
Yeah,
good at getting stuff done, and that's sort of a Larry value, and it's a value that I share and why I like working there. But it's not just talking. It's really focused on building buildings, creating programs, helping youth who've aged out of foster care go to college. Like that,
yeah,
it's very concrete, and I think that is a little bit unique in the nonprofit
yeah.
space.
Well, and we heard that your team is very creative. I think that was a really important ingredient to that magic was, you get stuff done, but you're also outside of the box thinkers about how to do it. So
Oh yeah, yeah, you
that was
have to
exciting.
be.
Yeah. So what about the work? We talked a little bit about what you were hoping to improve. What about the works helped you support your goals?
I mean, I'm really glad we did that process when we did, because now we are going through a leadership transition and we've hired a firm and they're trying to communicate to the world what we're looking for in a new leader. And if we hadn't sort of gotten on the same page about what our values are and who we are, I think it would have been a lot harder to write that job description and understand what we're looking for, because we're not, you can't just, oh, we're looking for a new Larry. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking to the future. It's time to look to the future. So I think that helped our senior team and our board take a little bit more ownership. And so I would say that's a goal that was definitely accomplished. And I'm really glad. I can't imagine like if we hadn't done a process like that before embarking on this transition, like what language would we even put in that job description? What would we
Yeah.
say? Would we take Larry's job description from 20 years ago and post it? Like, I don't,
Would you have him write it? Right. Yeah.
yeah. There's also an acknowledgement of we can do things differently. Like we don't have to do things exactly how we've been doing them all along. Like we as a senior leadership team can work together to make organizational changes. Like the field of affordable housing has changed. Even in real estate development, the cost of everything has gone way up. The cost of managing property has gone way up. The
Mhm.
environment's changing. So like what do we as an organization need to do to weather those changes and still be sustainable and be able to function?
Yeah. You had also mentioned, kind of communication and understanding those top priorities was something that you were hoping to improve. Were there any changes in the communication
Yeah.
between, senior staff and board?
Well, we outlined a bunch of priorities, and some are easier to work on than others, but like the compensation one, for instance, we moved for we're always wondering, like, is our compensation too low? Is it equitable throughout the agency? Is it, how do we compare to our peers? Does our structure make sense when we're hiring someone? How do we know how much, like what the range is? We just didn't have any structure around compensation or knowledge of where we were in the industry. And so after we did all that work, we agreed that that was a priority, and we hired a consultant that had worked with a lot of other local nonprofits on putting like compensation bands into place and to see where we are. And we got that study, and we actually weren't as off as we thought. And now we have a structure we can use for hiring that's a lot less stressful. And we feel like we're a little bit more, I mean, we don't have high salaries, but we're not like egregious. We're like in the middle. So anyway, that was like a concrete action that came out of it that I think was really helpful.
Excellent. Um, how else has Action Housing changed today, like over the last year or so since we did this work? Does the staff think differently about how Action fits into its community? Have there been other big changes?
I think the senior staff is more collaborative. You know, we did some working sessions with you afterwards to help facilitate our senior staff dynamic. And we're actually doing like a listening session in a few weeks, but we're trying to work more collaboratively and take more ownership of problem solving, because once Larry's not there, we need to be able to work together on solving some of the challenges that are faced by the agency. So I'd say communication has increased. And I think we also understand the need to have a strategic plan, to have some sort of vision. I just think we can't start on that until we know who our new CEO is.
Excellent. Were there any unexpected benefits to this work?
It felt really positive. I was worried people might feel kind of threatened, or like, I guess because we hadn't really done it before and it sort of came out of nowhere. And it was just Larry and I be like, okay, we're going to do the strategic framework. Like it wasn't a joint decision to embark on this journey because everyone's so busy. But I think that the sessions we had felt really positive, and even the feedback from the staff, which, you don't know how the staff has weathered COVID or sort of how morale is. Like a lot of it felt sort of hopeful and positive and optimistic. And that, not that it was a surprise, but that was that made me feel good because I was a little concerned.
Yeah, well, I remember because you have so much staff that's been there a long time, and then you
Mhm.
grew so much during the pandemic. Have you seen yeah, any effects of being able to listen to the staff and sort of reflect on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And we grew so quickly. We have different locations, so people haven't even met each other. So we're trying to do more like morale building, all staff events. And we had our holiday event. We tried to have opportunities for people to meet each other that didn't know each other. We're all going to a pirate game. We had a summer
Awesome.
picnic. Yeah, that was great because it was just spending all afternoon outside in like a city park. So it is hard because we have people who've been there for 40 years. We have people who've been there for 1 year. We have a lot of different generations, a lot of different, we just have a lot of diversity in our staff. So keeping them all engaged and helping them feel good about the transition is a challenge, but we're trying to be really transparent and have like as much open communication as we can.
That's wonderful. Um, well, Lena, those are the questions I had for you. What's the
Oh,
best way for people to connect with you or Action Housing?
oh, well, you could check out our website, actionhousing.org, or email's good. And my email is Landrews, LAndrews at actionhousing.org. And I'm happy to answer any questions about our excellent experience with teenyBIG and Emily. And hopefully next we will be embarking on our strategic plan and we will chart a wonderful future for our organization.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see where you guys go next,
Yeah.
and bringing on a new leader. So, well, thank you for sharing everything today.
Yeah.
And yeah, always good to see you.
Yeah, you too.